Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the AI Edge podcast. We're here to help marketing and advertising professionals stay on top of AI news and its impact on the ad and marketing industry. Really excited about this episode. We have a special guest with us today. Her name is Debra Williamson. And so Debbie, I'm going to hand it over to you to just say a few words about your background and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my full professional name, by the way, is Debra Aho Williamson. That's how people will know me professionally, but I go by Debbie. So I am the founder and chief analyst of Sonata Insights, which is a research and advisory service focusing on how AI is transforming advertising and what that means for the marketing community. I'm also the writer of a very fast-growing Substack called the AI Ad Economy, which traces the growth of AI platforms as advertising destinations and explores again what that means for marketers, advertisers, and consumers. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Debbie. I mean, you're going to be a wealth of knowledge. I'm so excited to learn from you. And everybody, subscribe to Debbie's Substack, please. Also, we have somebody else in the podcast this week. His name's Myles Younger. Hey, Myles.
Hey, Shiv. Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Myles.
Okay, let's jump into the news of the week. So the top story, it's unavoidable. We have to talk about it, even if we may not want to. Sam Altman is a liar, apparently, per a lengthy expose in the New Yorker by Ronan Farrow. And this is a very long article. I admittedly did not read every single word in the article, but I did kind of skim it, and I got some AI summaries of it. And the gist of it is it really kind of focused on when a couple of years ago, Sam's board tried to fire him. And Sam basically turned it around on them, fired a lot of them, and took all the power back and turned OpenAI from like a nonprofit essentially into one of the fastest growing, largest ever for-profit companies. And a lot of the expose kind of gets into how Sam has basically had like two personalities over the years, right? So one personality is like this visionary builder, right, of world-changing technology and like wants to do good and wants to achieve AGI and is really smart and, you know, just this kind of like shining beacon of innovation in Silicon Valley. And the other Sam Altman is kind of like this strategic, narcissistic, on the ground operator that's constantly like bending the truth and basically constantly lying. I mean, there was one funny story where it's like, I don't know if this was in the expose, but it was on social media where he lied about being really good at ping pong. And then he like, showed up one day. He's like, I'm like a ping pong champion. He started playing ping pong and he was absolutely terrible. Anyways, so, you know, there's a bunch of OpenAI news that we're going to cover. Also, Fiji Simo, who is their head of, I forget what her title is, but she basically heads up ads and a lot of the strategic business aspects of what OpenAI is doing. She's leaving, apparently medical leave, which is not great. And then not great for her. And then obviously not great for OpenAI. And then Kate, Rauch, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's the CMO. She's also stepping down. So some exodus going on at OpenAI. So anyways, I'll quickly open this up to you guys. Let's start with you, Debbie. Any thoughts on Sam Altman and his pathological lying?
Well, what a way to open a podcast.
We have to do it.
Oh my God. So, I mean, my thought is, and first of all, when you said you didn't read the whole article, I was like, that's what ChatGPT is for.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Sam.
Anyway, that's what we do right now. But that goes to what I think is so fascinating about Sam Altman. Just like any other brilliant mercurial founder that we have out there, we could name lots of names in this community that get books written about them and profiles written about them. And by the way, if Ronan Farrow is writing a profile about you, yeah, you're kind of in for it. So, but honestly, my thought on Sam Altman and OpenAI is that he simultaneously knows what he's building and also doesn't really know what he's building and is constantly surprised by what it actually can do. And that has to be kind of terrifying and unsettling sometimes for somebody who's a founder, because you know you're onto something unbelievably world-changing that could have incredibly positive impact. but also could have incredibly horrible, destructive impact. And it's your job to manage that. So I look at it as like, how do you live your life knowing, like, balancing these two things on a daily basis? So if he's changing his mind, if he's going back and forth, if he's, I can't speak to the lying about ping pong story, but I feel like you don't know from a day to day what this thing that you've come up with your engineers is going to do. So how can you say the same story every single day?
Okay. I like that. So we're going pro Sam Altman, Debbie. I like that. We're giving Sam the benefit of the doubt. I like that.
I like a founder story. Elon Musk, the biography of Elon Musk from a couple years ago, I devoured that.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I like the guy, but I think he's super interesting guy.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Fascinating to read about.
Myles, what do you think?
Well, Debbie, like, you raise these interesting like quandaries that OpenAI and Sam Altman have in, I'm sure there's a technical term for it, sort of a first mover disadvantage. Like, OpenAI came out of the gate super strong in, I'm actually losing track. It was like late 2022, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And, for a long time, everybody was ragging on Google because Google needed to catch up, blah, 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 blah. And, OpenAI seemed impervious to, like, they just leaped out into the market with ChatGPT, fastest growing software technology product of all time, blah, 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 blah. And you fast forward a couple of years and you realize that being a first mover in market is often not actually an advantage. It seems like one at the very outset, but then things start to play out and then you end up with second mover advantage. And so now that's where we have, tools like Claude that are like really kind of taking the spotlight these days. And Debbie, as you were talking about a founder story, like I am not comparing Sam Altman to Steve Jobs as a person, but I was just reminded of Steve Jobs and his contemplation of what personal computing could do for humanity. And he was the person who sort of made the first moves to say, hey, get us out of like DOS prompt world and introduce GUIs and things like that and say, hey, everybody's completely misunderstanding what computers can be for humanity. And so Apple is going to go in a very different direction than, say IBM or PCs in general, et cetera. And then, well, what happened? He got fired. Like Apple languished for years. For years, Apple was just kind of a joke in the personal computing world. Microsoft was the clear leader. And then it took many, many years into the 2000s with the launch of the iPod and then the iPhone and the iPad to really come back around to what Steve Jobs' original vision was. And so, who knows, maybe we're seeing a more compressed version of that with OpenAI, but this isn't the first time that this has happened, that there has been some transformative possibility with computers. There has been a founder who has sort of recognized that possibility and is grappling with what to do with it and maybe sees it in a unique way versus the rest of the market. But that doesn't always translate to like across the board success. And we're seeing that with OpenAI right now, where the strategy changes constantly. They're publishing hit pieces on Sam Altman, and it's just kind of like, what's going on with this company?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Debbie? Any response to Myles?
Well, I mean, what was running through my head when you were talking about Steve Jobs and Apple, and I think that's a really interesting comparison, is the great advertising campaign. I mean, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was just like the crazy ones or the geniuses, right? They're never the people. They're never going to be the people that you always like, because they're always going to be controversial. But they're going to end up doing something really remarkable for business, for society, for technology, and like in the case of Steve Jobs, we're going to look back on them as incredible visionaries.
Yeah.
So, Shiv, you call me pro Sam. I don't know if I'm really pro Sam, but I can definitely see the power of the, mercurial founder story with the huge vision and lots of flaws potentially. I mean, it's just a fascinating story. Maybe it's the journalist in me, because I used to be a journalist.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you don't have to like the person. The person may not be a good person, but the person also may transform the world for better or for worse, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen with AI, right? It's transforming the world for better and for worse. Quick transition, actually a related story. So I think there was like some article that came out, or OpenAI might have put this out themselves, that their ambition is to have $100 billion ad business by the year 2030. And that's part of like their investment story, right? That's part of them getting shareholders to rally and put money in, is like, hey, we're going to be $100 billion ad business by 2030. Now that would make them the third largest ad company in the world. At that point, let's say if everything else stays the same, that would make them third largest behind Google and Facebook. And that's extremely ambitious, right? And so I think it's interesting just with a juxtaposition with like the expose, thinking about, okay, well, you have this guy who many of the people that were very close to him have said, come out and basically said he's a terrible person, he's a pathological liar. And that's, is that the person that, we want to be responsible for and overseeing AGI? And, in our little world of advertising and marketing, overseeing all the attention that people give to, having a guy kind of suck all of that media attention, media money into his platform. Like, is that the guy you want overseeing all of that, right? So anyways, I thought that was an interesting way to think about it too, which actually then takes us to the next story. Nice transition. OpenAI also published a policy document, a 13-page policy document, which they called the Industrial Policy for the Intelligence Age, Ideas to Keep People First. And the gist of this 13-page document is basically, Sam and OpenAI coming out and saying, listen, AGI is closer than we think. AI has extraordinary capabilities, obviously to do good, but also to do a lot of harm. There's going to be a lot of impact to humans and to society. And so government needs to take action and put the right safeguards into place to protect people and to protect society. And so here are some ideas for government to do that, right? And so some of the ideas that were proposed were around widespread job loss, right? So protecting people from job loss. There already is job loss, right? So how do you kind of create a safety net for people around that? Protections around cyber attacks, social upheaval, and also having like safeguards in place for when the AI goes rogue, and like other things, right? Like economic incentives for people, kind of like a universal basic income type of principle that's built into that, things to basically give people extra money when there is extraordinary job loss, and then maybe pull that back when unemployment, let's say, bounces back. So just ideas like that he's proposing and OpenAI is proposing that government should be thinking about now and implementing now. So given this document, given what we just talked about with Sam Altman and who he is as a person, given, we know OpenAI is very much now a capitalistic, for-profit company, what do you think the angle is? This marketing? Is this genuine kind of concern? Like, I don't know, Myles, let's start with you on this one. Any thoughts on this?
I guess I'm still on record that I haven't seen any actual, I don't know, evidence that I have confidence in that AI is causing job losses or will in the future. That just strikes me as like highly, highly speculative. Why would you trust AI companies? Of course they would make the prediction that their technology is that powerful. Like,
right.
Anyway, so setting that aside, I haven't read the paper, but I'm like, well, if I really thought about government policies that would perhaps, I don't know, did they suggest in the paper turning AI into a public utility? Of course they wouldn't suggest that.
No, they did that. Yeah. So part of one of the suggestions is like, hey, it should be a good that everybody can access, like the internet and electricity and water, et cetera.
And that strikes me as highly suspect, because that would directly
is that genuine,
undermine
right?
their valuation, this insane valuation that they, the market, investors, whatever, venture capital, et cetera, is bestowing upon them. I'd just be super skeptical of it. Anyway,
Sure.
Debbie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I did read the paper, and I think that there's some interesting things. So one thing that jumped out at me, and just to your point, Myles, some of the examples that were referenced in the paper, previous examples were electricity, the internet, when you're talking about access. Nobody owns electricity. Nobody owns internet. And similarly, nobody owns AI, but there's many companies that have a stake in wanting to make sure that there is access to these things to a lot of people, for a lot of good reasons. So I can see the point of view of OpenAI of, okay, well, if you think of AI as a utility, and there are many companies that provide this utility, it's in their best interest to have that utility available to as many people as possible to make use of it, to enrich their lives. I don't think they've fully sold the story yet on the value of AI to people's everyday lives, like the internet or like electricity for that matter. I think that people are still trying to figure out where it fits every single day. I mean, three of us probably use AI every day, but we're in a minority of those heavy users, and so that's one thing. But looking at it on a bigger perspective, I feel. Again, this kind of goes back to what I said earlier about Sam Altman. I mean, they are grappling with something that is, they don't know exactly what it can do and where it can go and what negative harms it can potentially cause. Or maybe they do know and they're just not saying. There could be a conspiracy theory here. But I think that in any situation like this, you want to be perceived with the government, with regulatory bodies, with the other countries in the world as a business that is supportive of understanding those risks and mitigating those risks. So that is a very strong business goal, regardless of like the language that they use in the paper about it being for the good of the world. It's also for the good of OpenAI to be perceived as a company that's leading the charge in this area.
Yeah, it seems
so
like
those are kind of two things that I thought about. Yeah,
it seems like this is maybe them getting out ahead of a perception that public perception, and then potentially whatever legislative action could be turning against AI. In like just public skepticism, regulatory pressure, et cetera, et cetera. But I just the electricity thing is so. There's a book that I have. If I had it close at hand, I would hold it up. It's called when old things were new. It's written in the 80s or 90s. It's pre-internet. And it looks at a lot of contemporary writing and thinking about electricity in the 1800s. And you could literally, a lot of the passages that were written at the time by the thought leaders of the time, 1800, people being published in, electrical journals and things like this. You could literally replace the word electricity with AI, and those sentences would be 100% relevant today, of these like thought leader people like navel gazing over
That's
electricity.
awesome.
And so I think that, there is an interesting analogy there, but where I get like stopped is I feel like, and this is where we veer off into sort of politics and policy at a more macro level. I feel like the United States has kind of lost the ability to regulate public goods. I'm just like, I just see that as being very unlikely that the US is going to like decide. In the 1800s, we had a capability of creating utilities. We created utilities around gas and electricity and sewage and water. These are all regulated utilities. They are not very profitable industries because their pricing is set by the government, et cetera, et cetera. The government basically gives you a charter to run that business. I'm like, is that going to happen with AI? Like, anyway, I'm cynical. Do I want it to happen with AI? Maybe we should have more utilities in the United States, but do I think it's actually likely? Probably not. And so again, this paper strikes me as more of a smokescreen for something than anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, Myles. And I think as our society becomes increasingly capitalistic and increasingly controlled by tech companies, and we talked about the country basically almost becoming like an oligarchy a few podcasts ago, of just like the FANG companies, of the five or whatever big tech companies. Yeah, it's like government has shown over and over again in the last several years, like they can't control what these companies do. They keep losing in court. Like they are feckless to a certain extent. And why should that be any different with AI and regulating AI? I'm going to bring it back to advertising, right? I think between, OpenAI coming out and saying they want to be $100 billion ad business by 2030, between Sam Altman buying TBPN, a few weeks ago between, them putting out this document. Like, I know that a month ago, they're like, hey, we're shifting to being the enterprise business, right? I think that was more for the shareholders and more for raising capital. But I do think they're still on track to be like, hey, we want to be consumer. We want to be the consumer AI company. How else are you going to have $100 billion ad business by 2030? You need everybody in the world using your tool, and a lot of them using it for free. Or for a small subscription fee by the year 2030, right? That's the only way Facebook is what it is and Google is what it is today, right? And so I think it just kind of reaffirms their ambitions. And this policy document to me is more of just like them pushing in that direction, right? We want to be the people's company, and this is more PR than anything.
Yeah, right. Valid points. And I think you're right. And on that point about ad revenue, I mean, it would be an incredible feat for OpenAI to get to $100 billion in ad revenue by 2030.
Yep.
That would mean that it had gotten there in 8 years from when ChatGPT was founded, which is an incredibly huge rate of growth. It could be possible. I mean, there's a lot that I think about with AI and advertising that could make that possible. But
totally,
to your point about boosting usage and making sure that people, I mean, it's a balance, right? Because the more people use it, the more people might want to pay for it so that they can avoid ads, but also get access to all the extra features.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be a very interesting balance to see where, how big that ChatGPT and other services that OpenAI might offer can get for them to get to that figure if they can get there.
If they can get there, yeah. Okay, cool. We've talked enough about Sam Altman and OpenAI. It's time to pivot and go to Anthropic. So Anthropic released they didn't release it actually. They announced that they have a new model. It's called Mythos, and Mythos is it's very mysterious, mythological in my opinion, because no one can have it. Apparently, it's too powerful. No one can have it except. They've, allowed some big companies to get access to it. They've actually created a consortium of companies called Project Glasswing. And it's basically Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Cisco, and maybe a few others, where they're going to use Mythos to detect vulnerabilities in code before cyber attackers can get their hands on those vulnerabilities and expose them. And, the idea behind Mythos is it's just like a new frontier model. It's very powerful. It's very powerful as it pertains specifically to code and its ability to detect vulnerabilities in code. And I don't know, are we ever going to get to use this? Like, I don't know. Is it too powerful? Is it AGI? Like, why can't we use it? I don't know. Debbie, any thoughts?
Again, really interesting. So I think it was a leak ultimately that the news of Mythos came out, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I believe that was maybe a month or so ago.
Okay.
If my memory is correct, there was a leak that they were working on this. But again, I mean, we just talked about, not to keep going back to OpenAI, but we talked about how this is all a little bit of PR. A lot of times when they put out things like this, and this has got PR for Anthropic written all over it as well, because simultaneously they're saying, we've developed this amazingly strong model. It's the best model ever. It does so much. It can identify all these vulnerabilities. And it's, we want to get it out there, but wait, it's too powerful, too big. So you have to wait.
So Debbie,
you have to wait.
So Debbie, as I tend to do, I took to social media last night and I said this. I was like, this seems like just maybe the best marketing in the world, right? Like that's what Mythos is, just amazing marketing. And I got shut down pretty quickly by some smart AI people. They're like, no, this seems really legit. They have all these big companies kind of coming together in this Project Glasswing thing. And I see that. I see that, but I still kind of think it's PR.
You weren't convinced?
I wasn't 100%. I was a little convinced, but I was still kind of like, it's too mysterious. It's too, I mean, they named it Mythos too. Like they just, it adds to the whole mystique and mythology of the whole thing. I don't know. Myles, do you have any thoughts on this?
Look, I'm going to go off in a totally different direction. This strikes me as like reminiscent of the public fascination and mystery that was created around technology and government, like in the, say, the 1950s. I mean, this just strikes me as that sort of old-fashioned, like, oh, we have top men working on a top secret project, and there's a consortium of global, and they all sit around a little ring-shaped table, actually a giant ring-shaped table in a bunker somewhere, kind of like pulling the strings. Anyway, from that perspective, I think it's a brilliant uh, publicity strategy to create this mythos, to do this myth making around AI as they try to figure out how to make people care about it. And this
Hmm.
particular tactic is working at least among sort of the tech crowd.
Yeah.
Mass market public perception probably not very affected, but it's really getting the people like us sucked in.
Yeah, and listen, Anthropic and OpenAI have just demonstrated over the last year or two, they are all in on marketing AI, right? They're
Yeah,
all in on it. Like freaking Anthropic bought a Super Bowl ad, and most people didn't seem to like it, but that's, aside from the point, like these guys are marketing machines and they care deeply about marketing AI. And so, yeah, like you better, okay, maybe some of it is real and it's maybe it's a little too powerful for people to have it right now, but you better believe a good part of this whole thing is the marketing of it all, right? So yeah.
Well, I just to throw one quick thing in there, though, the one thing that I did hear that did concern me is that this model was able to identify vulnerabilities, security vulnerabilities that maybe had existed for decades that
yeah,
nobody else had found.
yeah,
That part is
Th-
really scary, but also awesome at the same
yeah.
time.
That
And I think
Yeah.
that to me was sort of like, okay, this is legit. Maybe it's
Yep,
marketing, but if the model can do that, that's pretty incredible.
that does strike me as like I absolutely believe that. With the limited use I've made of AI to write code, it's extremely good at that, and so I totally 100% believe that a cutting edge model today can find security vulnerabilities that were latent in systems or that human engineers just would have missed. 100% believe that.
I bet if Anthropic put up like a wait list or something for Mythos, it would crash their site or something now, So good job, Anthropic. Okay, let's move to some quick hits of the week. So I'll just go through these really fast. Debbie, if you want to chime in on any of them, just cut me off. Otherwise, I'm just going to fly through them. Okay, so first one I want to talk about was Publicis and Microsoft did kind of like a reciprocal AI deal where Publicis is going to use Microsoft's AI models and tech for marketing work for their clients, and Publicis will also take on Microsoft's kind of like AI business, right? From a agency holding company perspective. So
The media
kind of
buying,
like
yeah.
yeah. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So, and I think Dentsu did a similar deal with Gemini not too long ago. So interesting to see these deals come about. And I think, it's interesting, right? Because it's kind of classic agency tech partnership where they're basically saying, hey, we're going to push a certain kind of piece of technology on our clients. Not all clients might want to use Microsoft's AI, right? And so I don't know what kind of, issues that causes for Publicis, and their clients. I don't know if clients push back on it, but it is, interesting deal. And I'm guessing we're going to see more of these. So, okay, I'm going to keep moving. Next one. This one I thought was really interesting too. So the Trade Desk, a big independent demand side platform, launched a new product called Performance Mode, which is basically like Google's Performance Max or like, Amazon's Performance Plus or Meta's Advantage Plus or so on and so forth.
Plus performance,
Plus,
whatever.
yeah, exactly. Plus Max Performance Plus. Theirs is called Performance Mode. They introduced a new word, mode, and theirs is similar, right? In the sense that you hit some buttons, you put in a goal, and it goes off and does a thing. And low transparency product. You don't really see what it does. You actually just pay a flat CPM at the end of the campaign. You're not kind of like bidding on specific inventory or anything like that. It kind of does it all for you and just spits out a CPM figure. And I think this is fascinating, right? Because it's honestly antithetical to everything Trade Desk has always stood for. They've always been the anti kind of walled garden, black box, the anti-performance max, the more like, hey, you have transparency into everything you do. You have control on everything you do. And so, I think, and Trade Desk has had a tough time over the last year or two, and they have to innovate in order to compete, and they have to probably play ball in some of these areas. I think, to me, what's been a little frustrating about the Trade Desk is like, I totally agree that they should be going down these paths and doing these things because this is valuable for their customers, for the market. I think what's frustrating sometimes to me is like the PR and the talking points still kind of sound like Trade Desk circa, 2018 always. Jeff's kind of saying the same things over and over and over in the market while the business is evolving and looking more and more and more like the big tech platforms. But yeah, anybody want to jump in on that one? Are we good?
Well, Debbie, yeah, I actually would love to get your reaction on this.
I think very quickly, I think my reaction is, you mentioned all the other companies that have performance this, Max Plus, whatever. It's kind of the thing du jour to be, to have some sort of a product that agentifies the buying process, the placement process, and takes the control away from the advertiser. I think that's something that every company seems to be offering in the tech space. So for Trade Desk, it's just it's a way, like you mentioned, to be competitive with other products out there in the marketplace.
Debbie, this strikes me as, I'm not the only person, sort of warmed over network buy. Like it's a network. You're buying into an ad network, a black box ad network. We've already had those, sans AI. And I mean, you're one of the people who is arguably doing the most thorough job of thinking through the whatever, first, second, third order implications of AI in the media landscape. Have you done any thinking, working through, is everything going to turn into a network buy now? Anyway, I would just love to understand if you have any thoughts there.
That's a great idea for something to think about and research. I have not done that yet. But I think we should definitely talk about that some more because everything's a network. Yeah, I mean, everything's always has been a network. I mean, you always and you want to keep people within your network, whether it's your actual walled garden or whether you are an open internet, open web network. Your goal as a business selling or helping people place advertising is to keep people in that network. So I don't see it being that unique from that perspective. Yeah.
I think it's about reconciling the value prop and the outcomes for the customer with the business interests of the actual company itself, right? And finding that right middle ground. Okay, I saved the best news hit for last. This was my sneaky, most interesting news story of the week.
Better than Sam Altman's ping pong.
better, Myles, better. Even though we had to open with that, this one was my sneaky favorite. So, Time Magazine is now pitching branded content to advertisers and marketers as a way to increase their AI visibility. So quick, let me just explain that a little bit better. So brands are trying to figure out right now, how do I show up in AI more often? How do I be the answer that people are looking for? And there's all sorts of AEO, GEO, AIO around all of that. Okay, well, I need to create more content and I need to be in more FAQs and I need more explainers and I need more YouTube content and I need to be on Reddit and all that stuff, right? Time as a publisher, as one of the big publishers in the world, is saying, hey, pay us, brand. We'll build a bunch of great branded content for you that we can optimize in ways where you show up in AI better, right? And so interesting. And I actually I don't know how much this happened in SEO land. I don't know if it happened a lot in SEO or it's more kind of new and novel for AI visibility. But I find this interesting, right? And it's a fascinating way for publishers to monetize AI, right? Publishers are obviously getting hit hard by AI and traffic getting sucked away, and they're trying to innovate and figure out how to make money. And they're like, okay, well, let's just go pitch the marketers that need to show up branded content. So anyways, Debbie, let's start with you on this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I can see it from the perspective of the publishers. And you are exactly right that publishers are being hit really, really hard by loss of traffic because of AI. And so they are scraping for ways to build revenue and to gain revenue. So I can see it totally from the perspective of a publisher that they might want to get in on this. But I also think that this is a complete sign that this business of AEO and GEO has jumped the shark. You have now got probably hundreds, if maybe not thousands, of companies out there that are offering to do exactly what you are talking about. And, tech firms, PR agencies, ad agencies, you name it. Now, publishers, everybody wants a piece of this.
Random guy on Upwork, right?
Random person, yeah. And it's become one of these businesses where everybody wants in because they think they can see a piece of action in getting brands to pay up for this sort of thing. The problem is the landscape keeps shifting. One week it's, hey, just invest in Reddit, you'll be fine. And then it's, okay, invest in LinkedIn. Okay, yeah, now you got it. Okay, great. YouTube, don't forget about YouTube. Oh, wow, what about your website? What about changing your content? What about working with influencers? I mean, it becomes like this giant thing that everybody seems, sorry, you can tell I have a rant here.
Rant away. Keep ranting.
We could talk about this on a total other podcast, but I just feel like there's so many businesses out there that are trying to grab a piece of this. I wish time well in this endeavor. I just feel like it is going to be a really, really hard sell for them to actually make significant money from it. Maybe they'll make a little, which will help.
Maybe. The thing I wonder with respect to OpenAI and I suppose the other LLMs is how sophisticated they are getting, or if they care about getting sophisticated about content publishers gaming AEO, GEO. I mean, Google has spent 25 years innovating on their indexing model and a ranking model to minimize the extent to which publishers can game the rankings. Like that is one of the main things that Google does with their models, is to make sure that the search results you see are of the highest quality and you're not seeing a bunch of stuff that was gamed. And it's interesting to see that all being playing out again with AI. And I wonder when and if OpenAI and the other LLMs will sort of develop the other side of the coin, which is and Google publishes their model, their indexing sort of guidelines. Sorry, I'm struggling to remember kind of what it is that's called that they publish these updates. Is they're transparent with the market. And so anyway, it's just interesting as OpenAI and this all evolves as a business, it'll presumably exit this sort of Wild West phase at some point. But while we're in the Wild West phase, yeah, why not? Time, sure. Sell some SpawnCon fake articles.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Debbie, this is I don't know if it's actually a great transition, but we're going to transition now into your work. So we want to hear a little bit more about, what you're up to, what kind of research you're doing nowadays. I would imagine it's very different from what you used to do in the age of AI. And, we want to hear about kind of how AI is changing your work and how you research. We want to hear about the types of research you're doing that pertains specifically to AI. We want to hear about what kind of insights you've discovered that you can bring to our listeners about, AI and how it's changing marketing and advertising. So let's start wherever you want to start, Debbie, but we're excited to hear about all of this.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So before I founded Sonata Insights, I spent 19 years at eMarketer, the digital research firm, where I founded and led the social media research practice for 17 years. And I was very early. I was one of the first analysts to identify the power and potential of social media as not only a consumer phenomenon, but something that advertisers, businesses need to pay attention to. And it was almost by accident. I was researching college students at the time, and I was interviewing college students. I live in Seattle. I went to University of Washington. I was interviewing college students, and asking them about how they were communicating with, and they were saying, well, if we want to talk to our parents or our professors, we use email. But if we're talking to our friends, we use these things which were unusual to me at the time, called Facebook or MySpace or Friendster. And so I went and I wrote a whole research piece about how college students were changing the way that they were communicating. And that they were using these social platforms, social networks more often. And this was something we ought to pay attention to, because when young people start to shift their behavior, it's often a precursor of larger changes in consumer behavior. So I went to my bosses at eMarketer and I said, hey, there's this thing going on. Maybe we should pay attention to it. I'm not really sure exactly where it's going to go, but these companies are kind of interesting. And lo and behold, 18 years later, 20 years later, these companies are some of the most powerful, well, maybe not MySpace, but Facebook, certainly Meta, is one of the most powerful companies in the digital landscape and in the media world. And so I tell you that story because my power is being able to identify changes in consumer behavior that have huge impact on marketing strategy. I did that with social media. I'm doing that again now with AI. I pay a lot of attention into how companies use AI internally, but my focus and my passion is how do you use AI externally to reach your customers, to reach your audiences in new ways? And how are those people using AI in their daily lives in new ways that intersect with what you're doing? So you asked about my research. I spent a lot of time thinking about AEO and GEO, for example, and how this fits into the landscape of marketing your business. How do you think about showing up on these platforms? I agree, it's extremely important because people are going on a daily basis to say, I want to buy a new moisturizer, recommend a product for me. Or maybe they're not even asking for a recommendation. They're just learning about, and then they're getting product recommendations. I mean, it just happened to me a couple weeks ago. I was introduced to a brand new product for eye cream. I hope my eyes look good. I don't know. I was a new eye cream because that I'd never heard of before because of ChatGPT, and I went and I bought it.
Yeah.
And these things are happening over and over again. So I am completely fascinated with how these transformations are happening and how marketers need to adjust where they're marketing, who they're marketing to, and what types of marketing vehicles they're using because of AI. And so I have a huge passion for this early stage where everything is new and you have a lot of potential ahead. And I want to be the person to help the businesses navigate through that.
Yeah, Debbie, I have a question to follow on to that. I will attempt to articulate it here. So, actually, a question, Debbie. Who's your primary customer with Sonata? Is it marketers? Is it platforms? Is it a mix of different business types? Who do you work with?
That's a really interesting question because my business has different parts to it. So the research business, it's really a variety of companies. I sometimes work with other research firms. Sometimes I work with publishers. Sometimes I work with companies who are in the AI space who want to lead the conversation. So this is really thought leadership research. This is about building external facing marketing products that are research driven and that use me as an analyst with a lot of credibility to come in and say, okay, this is, this is how the market is shifting, and for the companies that I work with, their product, their service, or whatever makes sense in this scenario. But I also have a private advisory and speaking business. So for those, that would be just going in and speaking at private events, conferences that are organized by companies. I have a couple things coming up with companies in the ad tech space where they are bringing in their clients and then they bring me in as a keynote speaker to set the landscape for how AI is changing. So it's a hard question because it really depends on the type of company or the type of, which part of my business you're talking about, what type of clients they are.
No, thank you. I didn't want to presume anything necessarily as I was going to ask you this question. And I was going to say that's how you and I met, is that UF Digital's head of AI enablement, Tamika Key, had asked me to moderate a panel at SIM, the Coalition for Innovation in Media Measurement.
Media measurement,
right?
Yeah.
And Debbie, you were on that panel, and that was a lot of fun. That was really cool.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
My question, going back to sort of this long story arc that you witnessed with the growth of social media, into just, at least in the case of Meta and TikTok, these kinds of platforms, massive, massive media businesses, and a huge, huge impact on just whatever mass market consumer behavior, consumer habits. Um, when you were going through that story arc, you didn't know necessarily what was going to happen next. And as an analyst, it was your job to try to see, peek around the corner. But now a lot of that is in the rear view mirror. And I would be curious, like, what were some of the major turning points that took place over that 20 years that you could maybe draw whatever speculative analogs into the future of AI, where if you're a marketer or if you're a media buyer or if you are just anybody who's trying to track this industry, kind of whatever bellwethers to look for, just based on, again, that story arc of social media that you experienced.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So, from the consumer perspective, I mean, social media generally started as something that only young people were involved in, particularly
Hmm.
Facebook, because it started on college campuses. And so there was a period of time where it was just a young person's thing, but eventually, their parents showed up and it became much more of a bigger consumer phenomenon. Um, you can't necessarily compare the AI platforms to social in that the activities are very different, right? People use social
Hmm.
media for very different reasons than they're using AI. You can really more accurately compare AI to search as a way as a parallel. But I think if you're just looking at social as a lens, I mean, there was a point in time where it went from being something that a small group of influential young people, young consumers did, to a much bigger audience. And we do see that with AI. We do see young people using AI more often, more regularly for a variety of reasons than older people. So I think that trajectory will continue.
Hmm.
Again, the reasons for using them are different, but the trajectory of young to old is something that I think will, or you'll older, I should say, and the growth of the older audience is something that will continue to happen and will probably start to speed up. On the marketing front, the one big turning point I look at is when Facebook. So Facebook encouraged brands to create brand pages, organic presences on Facebook, where you could, get followers and send marketing messages and
Yep.
interact and engage with these people. And it pitched it as, wow, this is a really great way, a new novel way to interact with people.
Hmm.
It was blissful for a few years. And then Facebook said, well, actually, we're going to take some of that organic reach away from you, the ability to freely interact and engage with these people. We're going to reduce organic reach. And if you want to still reach these people, you might want to buy advertising.
Hmm.
That was one of the things that really started to cause Facebook's ad revenue to grow.
Yeah.
And I bring that parallel up because we've just spent a lot of time talking about AEO, GEO, and marketers building a presence in
Hmm.
these platforms, AI platforms. I think that the period of time is very narrow before the platforms start saying, hey, you need to buy advertising to do this as well. You can't just show up here organically. You've got to actually buy advertising. So that's another
Yep.
transition that I think is coming too.
Watch it. Watch out, time.
Watch out, time. They're closing the loophole pretty soon. Hey, so Debbie, we're almost at time, but I did want to ask you one final question for the listeners. You're out there, you're doing a lot of research. You're probably uncovering all sorts of really interesting gems of information based on data. I guess, like, if you were to kind of like, leave the listeners, the marketers that are out there with one kind of bit of advice based on the data today around AI, like where they might be missing the mark or where they're really under indexing, that they should jump on something today. And maybe that's creative related, maybe that's analytics related. I don't know. Is there anything that just like pops in your data where you're like, hey, this is my headline for marketers right now. Like, do this type of thing. Is there anything to leave the listeners with like that?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that the growth in usage of AI is increasing rapidly. We're seeing year over year trends of many percentage points increase in the percentage of people who are using AI. So this is not like a random phenomenon anymore. So businesses need to be present there. But for me, I look at the advertising side of the business right now. It is really about to explode. I think we talk a lot about ChatGPT, but there's going to be advertising on multiple types of platforms, including a long tail of smaller AI apps as well. So now is the time to experiment. Now is the time to start thinking about how you show up, not only organically, but for paid advertising in these platforms. And it doesn't have to just be ChatGPT. There's a lot of other ways to get involved.
I love that. I think in one of our newsletters in the last month or two, we said 2026 is the year of AI ads. Like it's happening, guys. Get in there. Start experimenting, start testing. And with that, we're going to wrap this episode. Thank you so much, Debbie. You were amazing. Myles, thanks for being here. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah,
and
thanks
to our thanks to our listeners. I just want to say one thing before we wrap. We have our AI Accelerator coming up in May. So we're relaunching it. We're doing it again. We're really excited about it. We have a new sponsor this time. Our sponsor is High Touch. So they're one of the leading kind of platforms for marketers for them to kind of manage their data, use AI against all their data, do some really cool things with creative as well, and more to come on that. But please enroll for the AI Accelerator in May. It starts on May 11th. Use the promo code EARLYBIRDS Learn AI for 20% off. And thank you everybody for listening. And thanks Myles and Debbie once again.